What is your will, my master?
Hey, good morning, Austin. Quick demo for you for your Jawa's Junkyard Odin's Wrath. As you know, I got this done yesterday. I didn't quite have it in me to make a demo yesterday, but we can do one early this morning and then hopefully get this out in the mail to you today. Okay. Um, this is installed the Proffie V2. This has the crystal chamber chassis from Jawa's Junkyard that I'll show you here in a second. You've got CC sabers in there for your lit PCB, and this is a 2-button setup. Uh, this takes a little bit of doing to get the handle off, right? So these two switches, you got your main, you got one switch here, and then one switch here. They're both on magnets. So this one's pretty easy to pull out, just like that. But the blue one, you're gonna want to take this one. You're gonna want to take a pair of tweezers or something similar. I'm using these, but I'm being very careful. Come in here and grab it and pull it out just like that. And that's on a magnet too, right? Once you get those two switches off, then it's safe to take the handle off. And you just want to unscrew it like this. I'll take it right off. And this is the chassis that you provided me. And then also one of the quartz crystals that you provided me, I just broke it down a little bit so that it would fit in the shelf. And then, everything's good to go. So you've got your crystal reveal here. It's got its own NeoPixel accent that's wired independently from the main blade. So there's 2 blade styles per font on this guy, and this can do something different. You've got an OLED screen right here that I put in here for you, and then your Proffie board right here. So there are a few things I want to mention about this chassis, just so that you're aware. The Proffie shelf was a little bit too big for the board, so I had to use some E6000 and let it cure overnight to hold that board down in place right here, okay? Otherwise it wouldn't have stayed in place and I would have had to use some tape or something like that. But a little bit of E6000, that way you can pull the board up if you need to. But for right now, it's nice and solid in there. When it comes to the crystal chamber, then what I normally see, because the pixel is on top of the crystal, so you can see my pixel accent here and then the crystal over here. Normally, you would see like you would put the pixel accent underneath the crystal so you couldn't see it, but this is just the way that this chassis was set up, so that's fine. And then for the crystal, the only way to hold this in was to JB weld it right here, and then I went back and I painted it black, all the JB welds, so that it matched the chassis and it wasn't quite an eyesore. But that was literally the way I had to put that crystal in there. But it's nice and solid now. Everything's working great. What else? These greeblies were just slightly smaller than the chassis. So you got all these metal ones. This one, and then this one. Part of the casting process, there was just some variance there. So when I glue these in, I try to line it all up and evenly distribute that extra space. Okay. And then finally, on the chassis part, your OLED screen cover here, I just had to do some modifications on the back of it to get it to line up properly, and now it's glued in. So everything's working fine there. Let's talk about the saber just a little bit before I turn it on. Mainly the wood veneer, and I've had to do this before on these guys. So when I put this wood veneer on, all the cutouts for like this and the cutouts for these guys and this right here, they were just slightly off. So what I had to do, and then the wood veneer was just a little too long. It overlapped here on the crease. So what I had to do is I had to go in, cut the wood veneer down a little bit, glued it to the handle, and then when I was done, I had to go back with with an X-Acto knife, something like this, and come in here and try to cut out the shape a little bit more so that I could fit these greeblies in. I got it pretty close. I took my time. I did it. All the lines that I cut are straight, but if you're staring at this closely and you see the slight variances, that's because these cutouts were slightly misaligned, so I had to account for that. On the handle, on the top piece, it wasn't too much of a big deal because excuse me, it's just this one grid that gets glued in. It was overlapping on the back a little bit, but I cut it down, and then also the shroud that I JB welded covers that up. So yeah, that's everything on this saber that I think we need to go over. We can throw a battery in it. It's got the stock font package on it, and then a copy of the config file that I used for the saber is on the SD card as well. To get to the battery compartment though, you are going to want to take the saber or this chassis all the way out. So there's 2 set screws in the emitter section. You've got one right here, that's your chassis retention. And then you've got another one up here, that's your blade retention. So we're going to want to loosen this guy up. Loosen that up and the chassis will come out. You gotta loosen it up all the way though. Chassis will slide out like that. You will see a little hole right here in the chassis between the pixel holder and the chassis. I had to make that hole in order to have a wire path for your negative side of your battery terminal. There was a 0 wire path going from that so that I could feed the wires down and then over to the board. So yes, I made that hole on purpose when you see that, okay? Before we do that, the best way to put the chassis back in after you take it out for a battery is to put the handle on first. You want to put the handle on first. That way you don't have to guess on the chassis alignment because that chassis has to be aligned with these switch holes. So we'll put the handle on first and we'll put this off to the side. Then we'll come over here and we'll put our battery into our saber. Your saber. Your OLED screen working. It says Proffie board version 6.4, so you're on the latest firmware. That's the battery meter, so everything's looking good there. Even though it's a stock font package, on the first font, I did make the crystal kind of do something when the blade is off, just so that you could see that it's wired independently. So that's what your crystal is doing right now. And it's on a timer, so eventually it will go off. It's not going to stay blinking. See, it just turned off. Now that you've got your battery in, we'll take our saber. And of course, the easiest way is to line up this crystal reveal here with the slit in the handle, because this is where it goes, right? Because right above the crystal reveal, you've got that switch. And you can see your switch right here. So that's what we're going to do. You got to take the pommel off, though. So don't forget to take the pommel off. If you try to put this chassis in the emitter first before putting the handle on, you're going to have alignment issues. So it's best to do it like this. It's a snug fit, but just go ahead and play with it a little bit. Push it right up in there. When you're pushing it in there, don't push up in the middle of the speaker. Push on the sides of the speaker and you'll be fine. We'll go ahead and throw our pommel back on. That locks all the way down. And then once we got that in, we can come over here and we can tighten our chassis retention screw. And that will hold everything in place. I tried using this without the chassis retention, thinking that you wouldn't I could save you a step, but you really need it, right? Because it locks everything down. If you don't have that, it will push the chassis down when you put a blade in, and it will throw these switch alignments off. But once you've got that on, you can come over here and you can put your switches back in. They're on magnets, so you just basically throw them in there. So the blue button, that's your activation, right? You can see now your crystal is pulsating again. We'll hit your activation. Your LEDs firing up. The big one is your auxiliary. and you got twist off. I did not give you swing on because there's so much that you have to do in order to get this saber back together once you put a battery in that I didn't want it going off accidentally on you, but I did give you twist off. Okay, so we'll throw a blade in this guy. This takes a 1-inch diameter needle-pixel blade. I want to lock the blade down. And you can see your crystal, then it just timed out. There's flash on flash. We can hit a long press on our activation for our soundtrack. And the same thing to turn it off. Just like that, and then hit auxiliary to go to our next soundtrack.
Smooth Jedi.
And the rest of these, the crystal will just turn on when the blade turns on for now until you program it differently.
Smooth gray.
We got nice fire blade, fire crystal going on.
Smooth fuzz.
Now, if you want blade lockup, you have to hold down aux and hit the saber at the same time. Just like that. It can be a little tricky. And it will stay like that until you let go of the button. Just like that. And we'll turn it off and take the blade out. So yeah, everything's working like it should. We'll just go over taking the battery out, which is the same thing we did, but just in reverse, right? So we'll take the blade out. Don't forget to take your buttons out first. If you try to take this handle off and you forget to take your switches off, you might stress the magnets and they might pop off. So you don't want to do that. You want to remember to take your switches off. And then we can unscrew the handle. Take the handle off, and then we're going to need to loosen up the chassis retention screw to take the chassis out because that's where your battery's at. Slide it out just like that. And then from the positive side, which is over here by the switch, you can pop the battery out with your finger just like that. And that is pretty much your Odin's Wrath. Let me know if you got any questions. If not, I'll try to get this out in the mail to you today. All right, thanks.